Imagine, it's the summer of 2008. You're no older than 6 years old. You just left school, running back home, and not running away from something, but rather running towards it. You have no idea what it's called, but that little machine instills you a great sense of adventure and joy. It feels like a second friend. And that was my first experience with what I came to know as today as wait, a TV game. I tell this story since it's my first and last exposure to video game cartridges. And as much as I didn't know at the time the technology was already an ancient relic, but being in a third world country, this is an all too common of an experience. In hindsight, I'm fascinated and glad that I got the exposure of experiencing a little piece of 90s magic, even if memory doesn't serve me all too well on the exact specifics of that technology. But let me start by asking you a question. Why move away from such a playful design for a kid's entertainment system? And well, the subject of today's video, PlayStation, is key to some of those answers. Before Sony's entrance to this now 70-year-old industry, early home entertainment systems were very much simple in nature, to the point where anyone could easily vibe code any Odyssey series video games with improved features today. While the Odyssey series spanned from 1972 to 1978, they were quite innovative pieces of technology, I must say. We don't attribute a lot to the first generation of consoles, but we should remember that these consoles introduced things like controllers and just the simple overall design of what a console is, courtesy to Ralph H. Baer. In this aspect, the first gen of consoles were very much ahead of their times, I would say. While the early first generation of consoles were pretty much codeless machines, the later half of that generation did include embedded programming video games. The original Odyssey included games like table tennis, pong, and hockey was introduced, and somehow even an unreleased Spider-Man game for the Odysseys too. I find this as a fun fact really because I would love to compare and contrast how the first generation console of a Spider-Man game would work compared to what we have today with Marvel's or Insomniac's rather Spider-Man 2. The first generation of consoles isn't the one that introduced removable media. The cartridge, the video game cartridge, as we know it today, only arrived thanks to two men, Wallace Krishna and Lawrence Haskell. Sorry if I butchered those names. These two, who invented the technology, would go on to license it to a company known as Fairchild, who would then go on to release the console named the Fairchild Channel F.
The one with all the fun. The Fairchild Video Entertainment System at your larger JCPenney. The home entertainment system that never gets old. Plug in a new video cart and change the fun. Play tic-tac-toe, shooting gallery, or just doodle. Switch video carts and play Desert Fox. Switch again, it's blackjack. Or play the two built-in games, Pro Hockey or Tennis Champ. Channel F for fun. The Fairchild Video Entertainment System. Just $169.95. Video cart cartridges, $19.95 each. At your larger JCPenney.
And in recent years, this fact was a bit diluted. Most thought an engineer named Jerry Lawson invented the technology for a period, although this is not the case. Jerry is still a monumental figure in video games and gaming in general, especially in his assistance in getting the technology, not known as the cartridge at the time, but the cartridge, like cartridges in general, to the populace with the Fairchild Channel F and home console gaming as we know it today. Why cartridges though? What about this technology did Jerry Lawson see, and what made it so special in the gaming industry? Well, what all the engineers who were mentioned, especially Jerry Lawson and whoever else was present to witness this technology at the time saw, was how this technology would shift the entire business model of home consoles. essentially allowing for industry growth. Instead of selling a new console to each individual house with preloaded games, the cartridges would now serve as a new method of consistently getting new revenue streams without having to go through the marketing hassle of trying to sell a new console almost every year. The cartridges themselves were developed at the time where Intel microprocessors were really facing leaps in technological feats. This environment allowed engineers like Wallace Krishna and Lawrence Oskell, sorry if I'm butchering, to truly realize how one can create video games using software that runs on a microcomputer. Now, both engineers worked on developing a system that would do just that, allow users to play video games on microprocessors and change the type of game being played at any moment. Now, this feature was kinda present in the first generation of consoles, but with variation. Although users were allowed to change the type of game, the game in terms of gameplay didn't really change that much. Now, the processes that allowed for this cartridge invention to blossom did grow, but it wasn't a small venture. Memory, much like today, was still very much expensive and would shape the limitations of the hardware at the time and what kind of software, i.e. video games, were being played. But even so, the leap was still monumental, because at this point, all video games before was pretty much monochrome, but now instead we get 3-bit color schemes and sound. A sense of fatigue in the medium was already creeping up in the late years of the first generation, as consumers were flooded by consoles with each one essentially just being Pong. And this didn't change much in the second generation. As the adoption of cartridges, console manufacturers didn't have to develop their games. In turn, the barrier of entry to the medium was lowered a bit, since all you need was engineers who knew their way around the system. Although manufacturers like Atari were unaware of this fact. Since they had the patent for the cartridges, it made them assume they'll be the sole distributor for their consoles, which was logical of them to assume.
It comes with 27 games, but that's just for starters. You can get 9 cartridges, 187 games.
Blackjack! Oh!
I'd like an Atari.
Sorry, only our demonstrators left.
Mine!
No, George. Mine.
The new video computer system by Atari. More games, more fun.
We all know about the video game crash and how Nintendo essentially changed the way the industry operates, with their more strict governance over third-party development and constituting the official Nintendo seal of quality, saving the industry in the US as a whole. But not much changed in the design and implementation of the cartridges. Nintendo still continued to use the technology long after its initial initiator Fairchild and Atari, even improving on it slightly throughout the third and fourth generations consoles. Like in the SNES game Star Fox, their cartridges were equipped with special chips that allowed 3D graphics in a 2D console, and other cartridges just having an overall boost of performance. Cartridges had their advantages. They had essentially zero load times, they could be enhanced, and they were durable and very much capable of handling the messy nature of kids. But by the 90s, they were slowly showing their age compared to the competition.
Though not yet officially launched in Britain, Night Trap is one of a new generation of video games on CD. The discs have so much storage capacity they can feature live action sequences with real actors, though the clarity of the video picture is often poor. One sequence in
The move to optical discs was simple. Cartridges were just becoming way too expensive to manufacture, and their storage capacity way too small to even justify the cost. As the VGCL puts it, the SNES cartridges cost around $15 to $20 to manufacture versus pennies for an optical disc, with the storage capacities of cartridges being the ones you see on screen. With normal computing technology ever increasing, so did the ambitions of developers during that time period. One can easily just see this with the advent of PC games being considered way better than ones on consoles. These drawbacks are essentially what drove the industry away from cartridges into optical disc. There were so many consoles that came before that used CD-ROMs. Just like the Atari 2600, it's the Sony's PlayStation in 1994 that stepped in and shifted the industry to use optical disc as an industry standard, due to them outselling every major competitor combined. And it's safe to say, everyone else took notes on what made PlayStation so successful, and they took notes of the CD-ROM as well. And really what made the CD-ROM so transformative, it just profited both consumers and PlayStation at the time, especially with them having CD disc manufacturing capabilities internally with the greater Sony group. The company's efforts in creating a unified digital standard alongside Philips led to the creation of CD-ROMs. This CD technology allowed for a wider range of storytelling in video games. The CD-ROMs were capable of holding around 650 to 700 megabytes of data, making it easier for distributing software and replacing floppy disk on the PC side, as well as the cartridges at its respective use cases, with the only trade-off it being slower than the cartridge. But with the vast capabilities it has, even seeing a door open every time I enter a room in RE2 was worth the compromise, cementing in history of how PlayStation kinda changed the way we play. And PlayStation's influence on the console market didn't just end there. The evolution didn't halt with the original PlayStation. In subsequent years, the industry shifted from CD-ROMs towards DVD. This new medium is yet another collaborative breakthrough from Sony and Philips, essentially just serving as a more robust iteration of the existing disc technology, increasing the disk capacity to a maximum of 7.4 gigabytes. Both the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox use this technology. During the PlayStation 2's launch year, Sony and Pioneer Electronics were already working on a new optical disc project known as DVR Blue. This was the conception of the now used Blu-ray disc, a successor to the DVD. With the launch of the PS3 came the use of Blu-rays within the console market, but it wasn't met with widespread adoption. Throughout the 2000s, there was a mini optical disc war on what could truly be the successor for DVD. Even Microsoft's Xbox continued using DVDs as its standard, while Nintendo, leaving the cartridges behind, still wanted to be different and use its own proprietary optical disc technology with reduced capacity. This meant on both of those consoles, larger games required more than one disc. But on PlayStation sides with the Blu-ray, it was capable to hold 25 to 50 gigabytes per disc. But eventually, even today, this size is nearly not enough for new AAA release titles. While the incorporation of CD-ROMs in the home console gaming industry allowed developers to exercise a wider range of three-dimensional and more immersive gaming experiences at a cheaper production, the transition from CD to DVD and DVD to Blu-ray was a more technical one, mainly focused in expanding storage sizes and rendering speeds, allowing for more higher fidelity images, textures, and sounds to grace our screens in the late 2000s. And at that same time, there I was, a young 6-year-old boy experiencing cartridges in my one-bedroom home, not knowing the vast nature of how the current game industry truly is. Even then, something else was already brewing in the industry. This was digital game distribution. Nothing huge yet, but fast forward today and it's its own beast. Early experiments on digitally licensing a game was done with Xbox Live and the PS Store on home consoles, but this approach was nothing new. Valve's Steam platform adopted this model for solving a logistical problem they faced distributing patches for Counter-Strike players, which honestly in hindsight is a noble cause and good intentions on their part for the birth of the Steam client, since it was a surefire way to keep all players up to date with the latest patches. The Steam client would then mature into an online distribution with full video games in a matter of a few years. And throughout the 2010s, the internet and digital media consumption as a whole just grew. Now console companies double-dipped on selling physical and digital versions of their games, and this was exacerbated by 2020. Digital sales started exceeding physical ones, which is obvious that would occur then, in hindsight. That cough we all had. The recent PlayStation blog stated essentially they'll discontinue with physical discs because of adopting to the consumer trend, as the general preference sort of cites that digital outpaces physical discs. But is this really true? According to one article by The Game Business, their research done last year in the UK market showed that physical game sales are falling across all platforms. The number of physical games sold in the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 was only 800 and 600,000, while Xbox had 300,000. Although Nintendo saw a huge decline of 1 million, this huge number was attributed to the fact that Nintendo is the only dominant player at retail, having 80% of the physical retail space in Europe. With 2024 being a slow year for Nintendo, this data makes more sense, even though the Switch as a platform doesn't really advertise digital downloads per se, nor did consumers massively switch to digital. They continue to state things are a bit different for PlayStation across Europe. In 2023, 55% of games that both had a physical and digital release were mostly downloaded, and the number increased to 64% in 2024. Now, one can only imagine how 2025 or even 2026 is. But this doesn't really paint the whole picture yet, since the type of game release also dictates the preferred purchase method by customers. On online games such as Call of Duty, Fortnite, or even the example I'm going to later use, Helldivers 2, had a higher digital purchase rate. Now, story-driven single-player or family experiences really have more moderate physical sale releases. Now, the article continues stating that Helldivers 2, for example, had 90% digital sales, while Spider-Man had a 54% purchase rate by physical retailers instead of digital. And this, mind you, is from the same publisher. With most games being designed for online play first, it's also undoubtedly going to affect the metrics. Reoccurring sports titles from EA, your FCs, F1s, and 2Ks, also an uptick in online sales. But even then, the amount of people buying the game digitally in 2025 is not equal to the amount of people who bought the game digitally in 2024. Although it's the same iteration of games, the data is still not a one-to-one comparison, and that's just in the UK. In more third world countries, physical discs are still pretty much king. Since internet connectivity throughout is sort of hit or miss or non-existent, making it less desirable for consumers to own digital media and more physical ones. A library that's locked down to a cloud service that requires one to pay for internet access and a digital library of games doesn't seem so appealing. And unfortunately, I don't see PlayStation backing away from this decision to leave physical discs. With the release of PlayStation in 1994, the CD-ROM benefited all parties: the game industry, the manufacturers, the developers, and the consumers. But today, it seems like the move to digital is quite a cop-out. While Nintendo made Switch 2 games cheaper on digital compared to physical, PlayStation hasn't done that, and it's quite opposite at this point in time. And even if that was the case, it would further encourage more digital purchases in the long run. If cartridges allowed for selling individual games separately from the consoles, and CDs added a more richer and immersive experience at a cheaper cost, digital ownership on the manufacturing side, costs will be overall cheaper, but for the end users, Maybe the only benefit is a quicker way to purchase your entertainment without leaving the house. But at that point, what's the cost really? Perhaps that cost, I'll put it as genuine ownership. Looking ahead, the landscape of processing media appears increasingly dim. Much like the current dominance of television is streaming and subscriptions are becoming the primary gateway for audiences to engage with their preferred content, once global internet infrastructures matures, these consoles might merely serve as high-end portals for game streaming. In such a future, the burdens of hardware specifications, physical copies, or lengthy downloads would vanish for an average user. I can't help but think that this transition mirrors the shifts that we've seen in other sectors, where DVDs were abandoned for the convenience of music and film streaming platforms. Services like Game Pass already signal this direction. It will really be compelling to witness a world where streaming is the singular method for engagement. And this is the daily trajectory that PlayStation is actively pursuing today.